Nobody stopped you last year. Read that again. There was no conspiracy, no villain, no unlucky break big enough to explain a whole year. You stopped you quietly, politely, one small permission at a time. And here's the part that should give you hope instead of shame. If you were the one who stopped you, then you're also the only one holding the key. Let's talk about what you do with it. Because here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. You are not lazy. I don't believe that about you. Lazy people don't seek out something like this. Lazy people don't sit in the quiet before the world wakes up looking for a way to change. You're not lazy. You're negotiating. And there is a very big difference between the two. And almost nobody talks about it. A lazy person says no to the work. A negotiating person says later to the work. And later feels so much kinder than no. Later doesn't feel like failure. Later feels like wisdom. Later feels like timing. Later feels like being reasonable with yourself. That's exactly why later is more dangerous than no. Because when you tell yourself no, some part of you fights back. When you tell yourself later, every part of you relaxes. And that relaxation is what cost you the last 12 months. Now let's talk about what happens if nothing changes. Because I'm not going to pretend the stakes here are small. I've watched what happens to people who spend a decade negotiating. It's not dramatic. Nobody collapses. There's no rock bottom, no moment of reckoning, no scene where the music swells and you finally wake up. That's the myth. The truth is much quieter and much worse. What actually happens is that your ambition gets smaller so it can keep fitting inside your life. You don't abandon your dreams. You downgrade them quietly, respectfully, the way you'd trade in a car you can't afford anymore. First, you wanted to build something. Then you wanted to be part of something. Then you wanted a job that didn't drain you. Then you wanted a weekend where you didn't feel behind. That's the cost, not disaster. Shrinkage. And the cruelest part is that the shrinking feels like maturity. It feels like you're finally being realistic. It feels like growing up. But there's a way to tell the difference. And I want you to hold on to this. Real maturity narrows your focus. Fear narrows your hope. If you dropped 9 goals to chase one goal harder, that's maturity. If you dropped 9 goals because you stopped believing you could reach any of them, that's not wisdom. That's erosion wearing wisdom's coat. So let me give you the picture that's going to carry us through everything else I'm about to say. I want you to think about a river, not a stream, not a waterfall, a river. Here's what people misunderstand about rivers. A river doesn't win by being violent. It's not stronger than the rock. It's not sharper than the rock. Put a river and a boulder in a fight on any single day and the boulder wins, every single time, without effort. The boulder doesn't even notice the river's there. But the river has something the boulder doesn't have. The river has direction, and the river has return. It shows up tomorrow. It shows up the day after. It shows up when nobody's watching, in the dark, in the winter, in the years when nothing visible is happening. And 100 years later there's a canyon where the rock used to be, and every tourist stands at the edge and says, look what the water did. The water didn't do anything special. The water just refused to change direction. That's what unstoppable actually means. Not force. Direction plus return. And here's what makes it interesting. A river that stops for a season is still a river. A river that dries up in August and comes back in October is still carving. But a river that splits into 40 directions doesn't carve anything at all. It just becomes a swamp. So the question for this year isn't whether you'll be strong enough. That was never the question. The question is whether you'll pick a direction and keep returning to it. Let's start. 1. Stop trying to become disciplined and start becoming difficult to negotiate with. You know exactly what I mean by this. It's 5:40 in the morning and the alarm goes off, and before your feet touch the floor, a courtroom opens up in your head. And you are the defendant, the lawyer, and the judge all at once. And the case being argued is whether you really need to do this today. The evidence gets presented. You slept badly. You've got a long day. You did well yesterday, so you've earned some grace. It's cold. You'll do double tomorrow. And here's the thing that should frighten you a little. You always win that case. You are an outstanding lawyer. You have never once lost an argument against yourself, because you know every one of your own weak points, and you know exactly which excuse you'll accept. So most people hear that and think the answer is more willpower. Argue harder. Be tougher in the courtroom. That's the mistake. That's why they fail. You cannot out-argue yourself at 5:40 in the morning. Nobody can. Your judgment at that hour is not neutral. It's compromised, and asking a compromised mind to make a good decision is asking a drunk man to check your math. The fix isn't winning the argument. The fix is closing the courtroom. Here's how you do it today. You make the decision the night before, when your mind is clear, and you make it in a way that removes the choice from the morning entirely. Not I'll go to the gym tomorrow. That's a wish, and wishes get overturned. Instead, the clothes are laid out on the floor, the bag is at the door, the alarm is across the room, and you've written one sentence on a piece of paper by your bed. Just one sentence, in your own handwriting. You already decided this. That sentence isn't motivation. It's a verdict from a judge who wasn't tired. And I want you to notice something about how that feels. It feels like cheating. It feels like you didn't really earn it because you didn't have to fight. Good. Let it feel like cheating. The people you admire aren't winning harder fights than you. They're having fewer of them. They removed the fight from the schedule. But there's a catch. And this is where most people get it wrong within 2 weeks. Your mind will adapt. It will learn to argue with the note. It'll say, you were being dramatic when you wrote that. So every 7 days, you change the mechanism. New note, new location, new phrasing. You stay one step ahead of your own lawyer. And here's the part one wants you to sit with: the fact that you have to outsmart yourself isn't a sign that something's broken in you. Every person who's ever built anything has done exactly this. The difference is they stopped feeling ashamed about needing the trick. Now, there's a reason this works for a while and then stops working for almost everyone, and it has nothing to do with discipline. Let me show you. 2. Cut the number of things you're carrying, or none of them will ever get anywhere. Here's what happened in January. You wanted to get in shape, fix your finances, read more, start the business, be more present with the people you love, learn the language, sleep better, and finally deal with that one thing you've been avoiding for 2 years. 8 rivers, 1 watershed. And a river split 8 ways doesn't carve stone. It makes a swamp. Wide, shallow, moving nowhere, and mosquitoes everywhere. But here's the part that stings. You didn't fail at 8 things. That would almost be respectable. What actually happened is you succeeded at all 8 for about 11 days. And that early success is exactly what killed you. Because for 11 days you got to feel like the person who does all of it. And that feeling was so good that when it became unsustainable, you didn't drop 7 goals. You dropped all 8, because keeping one felt like admitting you weren't that person after all. That's what really happened. It wasn't a discipline failure. It was an identity injury. So here's what you do today, and it's going to feel like loss. Take your list and pick one. Just one, for 90 days. And then here's the part almost nobody does: write the other 7 down on paper and put a date next to each one. An actual date, months from now, when you'll pick it up, because you're not abandoning them. You're queuing them. And your mind will fight a deletion, but it will accept a delay. That's the whole trick. Now, how do you choose which one? Most people pick the one they want most. That's wrong. You pick the one that makes the other 7 easier. There's almost always one domino in your life that knocks over 3 others. For most people it's sleep, or it's the money situation, or it's the one relationship that's quietly draining everything. It's rarely the exciting one. And when someone asks you what you're working on this year, and you say one thing, and they look slightly unimpressed, hold that. That unimpressed look is the price of admission. Everybody who ever built anything real paid it. But now you've got a new problem. Because you're going to work on that one thing for 3 or 4 weeks, and then something's going to happen that nobody warns you about, and it takes out more people than laziness ever has. Music. 3. Learn to survive the middle, because the middle is where everyone quits. Every meaningful thing you'll ever do has 3 phases, and only one of them is dangerous. The beginning is easy. Everything's new, progress is fast, and you can see the change. Week 1 at the gym, you can barely finish. Week 3, you finish easily. That's enormous, visible progress, and it's fuel. The end is easy too. You can see the finish line. Adrenaline shows up out of nowhere. People find energy in the last mile they didn't have in the first 10. And then there's the middle. And the middle is a long gray hallway with no windows. Here's what makes the middle so brutal, and it's very specific. In the middle, your effort stays constant, but your visible results go to 0. You're doing exactly the same work as week 3, but nothing is changing on the outside. The scale doesn't move. The account doesn't grow. Nobody notices. Nobody claps. And your brain, which is a prediction machine and not a truth machine, draws the only conclusion it can draw from the available evidence. It says, this isn't working. That conclusion is wrong, but it's not irrational. That's why it's so persuasive. Because here's what's actually happening in the middle. And this is the part one really wants you to hear. In the middle, your gains stop being visible and start being structural. The river isn't widening anymore. It's going down. It's cutting deeper into the rock, in the dark, where nothing shows on the surface. Everything permanent gets built in the phase where nothing looks like it's happening. So what do you actually do? 2 things, and you can start both today. First, before you begin anything, you name the middle in advance. Write it down. Around week 5, this will stop feeling like it's working. That's not a signal to quit. That's the schedule. When the middle arrives and it feels exactly like you predicted, it stops being evidence of failure and becomes evidence that you understood the process. Same feeling, completely different meaning. Second, and this is the practical one, you change what you measure. In the middle, stop measuring results. Start measuring reps. You cannot control whether the scale moves this week. You can control whether you showed up 4 times. So you keep a piece of paper on the wall and you mark an X for every day you did the thing. And on the bad days, you're not trying to succeed. You're just trying not to break the row of X's. That paper becomes something strange after a while. It stops being a record and starts being a relationship. You start to feel loyalty to it. And here's the thing about the middle nobody tells you. There's no announcement when it ends. There's no trumpet. One day you just notice the work is easier than it used to be, and you realize you passed through something and didn't feel it happen. The middle doesn't end with a breakthrough. It ends with a Tuesday. But there's something that will pull you out of the middle before you reach that Tuesday, and it's not tiredness. It's other people. 4. Stop explaining yourself to people who are comfortable with who you used to be. Something is going to happen about 6 weeks in that you're not expecting. The pushback isn't going to come from your enemies. It's going to come from people who love you. They're going to say things like, "You're taking this pretty seriously. You've changed. You used to be more fun. Don't you think you're being a bit extreme? Why don't you relax? You've earned a break." And you'll be caught completely off guard, because it sounds like concern. Sometimes it is concern. But here's what's really happening. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every relationship you have runs on an unwritten agreement about who each person is. Your friend is the ambitious one, you're the funny one. Your brother's the responsible one, you're the one who never quite got it together. Nobody signed anything, but everyone knows the arrangement. And everyone's built their own identity partly on top of it. When you change, you break the agreement. And you didn't consult anybody first. So the discomfort they feel is real. But it's not about you being extreme. It's about them suddenly having to look at their own choices without you standing next to them as the reference point. Your progress is doing something to them that has nothing to do with you. Now here's where most people go wrong. And I want to be careful here, because the obvious advice is to cut people off. And that advice has wrecked more lives than it's saved. The mistake isn't the relationship. The mistake is the explaining. Because when someone questions your change and you launch into a defense, you've just handed them the role of judge. You've turned your life into a case that needs approval. And you will lose that case, because you can't argue someone into being comfortable with your growth. Comfort isn't reached through argument, it's reached through time. So here's what you do instead. Starting today, you stop explaining and you start deflecting warmly. Somebody says you've changed, you say, "Yeah, probably." Short, friendly, no defense, no case. And then you ask them a question about themselves. Because here's the thing you'll discover. Most of that pushback isn't a demand for an explanation. It's a request for reassurance that you're not leaving them behind. And you answer that request with warmth, not with argument. Then, separately and deliberately, you go find one person who's further along than you. Not a mentor, not a formal thing. Just one person in your life who's doing something with themselves, and you spend time near them. Because you need at least one relationship where your growth doesn't require a defense. And this is what nobody tells you about the people who fall away. Some will, but the ones who stay, and there will be more than you expect, will treat you differently after. Not because you convinced them, because you outlasted their doubt without ever asking them to drop it. Now, all of this assumes you're actually making progress. But there's a way to work extremely hard for a whole year and end up exactly where you started. And it's more common than you think. 5. Measure what's actually true, not what makes you feel productive. There is a specific kind of person who never gets anywhere. And it's not the person who does nothing. It's the person who does a great deal, constantly, and never checks. You know this feeling. You end a day exhausted. You've been in motion since morning, and something's wrong. There's an emptiness underneath the tiredness. You worked, you're worn out, and you can't point to a single thing that's different than it was this morning. That's not laziness. That's motion without measurement. And it's more dangerous than laziness, because laziness at least tells you the truth about itself. Here's why most people avoid the numbers. It's not that measuring is hard. It's that measuring removes your ability to feel better than you're doing. As long as you don't look at the account balance, you're getting on top of your finances. The moment you look, you're a person with a specific number of problems. As long as you don't track the workouts, you're pretty consistent. The moment you write them down, you did 11 days out of 30. The blur is protective. That's the whole reason it exists. So people mistake activity for progress, because activity feels like something and honest numbers feel like an indictment. Here's the fix, and you can do this today in about 10 minutes. Pick one number, not 5. One number that would actually tell you whether this year is working. Not how many hours you worked, hours or how you feel busy. Pick the number that changes only when something real happens. Money that came in, pounds, pages written, customers who paid, days you didn't break the chain. Write it on a piece of paper, on the wall, where you have to walk past it. And then here's the part that matters most, and it's a rule. You look at that number every Sunday, and you never, ever punish yourself for what you see. Because if looking at the number makes you feel like garbage, you'll stop looking within 3 weeks. That's guaranteed. The number has to be safe to look at, or you'll go right back into the comfortable blur. So you look at it and you ask one question, not "Why am I like this?" That question has no useful answer. You ask, what one thing would move this number next week? That's it. Look, ask, act. 7 minutes on a Sunday. And here's what I've watched happen to people who do this for even 2 months. They stop needing motivation. Because motivation is what you reach for when you can't see progress. When you can see it, when it's on the wall in your own handwriting, the work starts pulling you instead of you pushing it. But there's a day coming when even the number won't save you. A day when everything goes wrong at once. And what you do on that specific day matters more than everything else I've said so far. 6. Build a floor, not a ceiling. Here's the day I'm talking about. You slept 4 hours. Something went wrong at work. Someone said something that got under your skin, and by 7 in the evening you are running on empty, and the thing you committed to is still sitting there, undone. And on that day you make one of two decisions, and the difference between them is the difference between the person you'll be in 5 years and the person you are now. Most people go all or nothing. They think, I can't do it properly today, so I'll do it properly tomorrow. Which sounds responsible. It sounds like respecting the standard. But watch what actually happens over the next 4 days. Day 1, you skip. Day 2, you feel guilty. And guilt is heavy, so you avoid the thing that's making you feel guilty. Day 3, avoidance has hardened into a small dread. Day 4, you're not skipping anymore, you've stopped. You didn't quit on day 4. You quit on day 1. Day 1 was just the only day that didn't feel like quitting. Here's the mechanism nobody explains. When you do the thing, you're a person who does the thing, and doing it again tomorrow is just being consistent with yourself. When you skip, you become, for one day, only a person who doesn't. And now doing it tomorrow requires you to change identity, which is enormously harder than continuing one. That's why the streak matters so much more than the size. So here's what you build today. A floor. The absolute minimum version of your commitment that you could do on the worst day of your year, without exception. And it has to be almost embarrassingly small. If you're training, the floor is putting on the shoes and walking to the end of the street. If you're writing, the floor is one paragraph. Bad paragraph doesn't matter. If it's the business, the floor is one email. 2 rules on this. First, the floor is not the goal. Most days you go far past it. The floor exists for the 4 or 5 days a month when everything is falling apart. Second, and this is the one people break, you are not allowed to feel bad about a floor day. A floor day is a win. It is the exact opposite of a failure. It's the day you protected the whole thing. And here's what happens that surprises everyone. You'll go to do the one paragraph, the one email, the walk to the end of the street, and about a third of the time, you'll keep going. Because it was never the work you were avoiding. It was the size of the work. So you shrink the entrance. The room behind it stays the same size. Now here's where all of this starts to point at something bigger. Because there's a question underneath all 6 of these that I haven't asked you yet. And it's the one that determines whether any of this lasts past March. 7. Decide who you're becoming, then let the actions follow. Ask most people what they want this year and they'll describe a result. 20 pounds, a promotion, the business, the debt cleared, and there's nothing wrong with those. But results have a shelf life problem that nobody thinks about until they get there. Here's what I've watched happen over and over. Somebody chases a goal for 2 years. They get it. And within about 6 weeks they're emptier than they were before they started. Because the goal was doing more work than they realized. It wasn't just a target. It was a structure. It told them what to do on Tuesday. It gave them a reason to say no to things. And now it's gone, and the scaffolding went with it. That's why so many people who achieve something big immediately fall apart. Not because they failed, because they succeeded and the structure vanished. So here's the shift. Don't organize this year around a result. Organize it around a person. Not, I want to lose 20 pounds, but I'm becoming someone who takes care of his body. Not, I want to make more money, but I'm becoming someone who's useful to a lot of people and gets paid for it. Not, I want to read more, but I'm becoming someone who thinks carefully. Because a result can be achieved and then it's over. A person can't be finished. And that's not a burden, that's the relief. It means one bad week doesn't take anything away from you. Someone who takes care of his body can have a terrible week. He's still that person. But someone chasing 20 pounds who gains 2 has lost ground. And losing ground feels like failing. And failing makes people quit. Same week, same facts, completely different meaning depending on what you organized around. Here's your action for today. Write one sentence. I am becoming a person who _________. Fill in the blank with a character trait, not an outcome. Then write 3 small things that person does on an ordinary Tuesday, not on their best day, on a boring, unremarkable Tuesday. Then do those 3 things tomorrow. That's it. That's the entire mechanism of transformation, and it looks almost insultingly simple written down. But every single person you've ever admired got there this way, one ordinary Tuesday at a time. And when you're deciding something this year, should I take the job, should I make the call, should I stay in, you don't ask what you feel like doing. You ask one question: would the person I'm becoming do this? That question doesn't need motivation. It works when you're tired. It works when you're doubting. It works at 6 a.m. in the dark. Now let me tell you the thing that ties all 7 of these together. Because it's not what you'd expect. Music. Every single one of these 7 points is doing the same thing. Look at them again. Deciding the night before. Cutting to one goal. Naming the middle in advance. Not explaining yourself. Measuring one number. Building a floor. Choosing an identity. All 7 of them do exactly one thing. They take the decision away from the version of you who is tired, doubting, and alone at the worst possible moment. That's the whole secret. That's what unstoppable actually is. Unstoppable people are not people with more strength. Unstoppable people are people who made their important decisions once, in advance, while they were clear, and then refused to reopen the file every time they felt weak. The river doesn't decide each morning whether to keep flowing. That decision was made by the shape of the land a very long time ago. And that's why it wins against something 1,000 times stronger than itself. You don't need to become stronger this year. You need to stop renegotiating. So here it is, all of it, fast. Close the courtroom, decide the night before, and make the morning a formality. Cut to one thing. Cue the rest with a date. A river split 8 ways carves nothing. Name the middle before you enter it. The middle isn't failure. The middle is where it goes deep instead of wide. Stop explaining. Answer warmth with warmth, not with a defense. Find one person who's ahead of you. Pick one honest number. Put it on the wall. Look every Sunday. Never punish yourself for what you see. Build a floor so low you can't fail on your worst day. Floor days are wins. Protect the change. Choose who you're becoming, not what you're getting. Ask what that person would do, and then do that. And here's your one action, not 7. 1. Tonight, before you sleep, write 2 sentences on a piece of paper and leave it where you'll see it in the morning. The first sentence, I am becoming a person who underscore 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 dot. The second sentence, the smallest possible version of what that person does tomorrow. Your floor. That's it. 2 sentences. Tonight. Because here's what I need you to understand as we finish. A year from now is coming whether you participate or not. That's the only thing about your future that's guaranteed. The time will pass. The 12 months will happen. You don't get a vote on that. What you get a vote on is what's carved into you when they're done. Nobody stopped you last year, and nobody's going to stop you this year either. That's the hard part, and that's the whole gift. Because it means there's no permission left to wait for and no one left to blame. The rock doesn't decide what the canyon looks like. The water does. And you have been the water this entire time. Your time starts now.